Rich is coming tonight?
I don't know that. I haven't heard.
Is online.
Oh,
The one I've never seen.
Yeah,
me too.
We're live and recording.
You got anybody online? Like Ed?
Yeah, just one. What's his name? Mark. Is it Mark Poole? But he's the water engineer.
For the
Is that at the end?
Hanson Allen Lush.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Scott's taken off on us.
Yep.
Maybe we get to replace him with.
Ben?
Who's
Who are we
replacing
gonna
Ben?
replace Ben with?
Ben's gonna take the load.
Yeah. Scott. I don't know. Maybe, but he's quit. He's resigned. Yeah, it's about
Okay, we're on.
4 years.
Okay. Let's call the San Juan County Planning Commission meeting for June 8th. Can you believe it's June 2023 to order? Those in attendance are Cody Nielsen, Ann Austin, John Johnston, Lloyd Wilson, Trent Schaefer, Ben Tomko, and I assume Mac is in his office, Mac McDonald.
Mitch.
Ed Dobson here.
Ed, there you are.
Almost incognito.
Okay. All right. Would any member of the commission want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag
To the flag,
States of America,
to the republic, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Lloyd. Okay. Everybody had a chance to read the minutes. There was some duplications at the very end.
Can we pull those up?
Can you scroll down to?
You mean the end of the minute?
Yeah. Did you see that? Back up to the minutes.
Which item were you?
I go on up to the other minutes.
Should be the top of minutes.
Okay. Just give me a sec. I gotta find it in my own. Scroll down to. And Commissioner Stubbs is here. One more page. Nobody caught it? Come on, Ann. School teacher.
I didn't catch it.
One more page.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Ann.
Since we had the work session as an item in the regular meeting, I wonder if we actually need to do 2 approvals.
Well, we closed that meeting and opened
Yes,
up
sir,
the
I
work
know we
meeting.
did, but but we had it as an item in there on the previous agenda.
Yeah, I still think we need two motions.
I'll
just-
move the first one.
Okay. I guess it wasn't a real something that stood out. So I have a motion to approve the minutes of the actual planning commission meeting
Second.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay,
Move the second.
got a motion for the work meeting
I'll second.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. I'm gonna find that, but not tonight.
What was it? You got me curious.
I'll shoot you an email. Okay. We'll open the meeting up for public comment, and this can be anything that is not on the agenda or on the agenda. We'll take public comment for both. When did you come in?
Oh, I've been here.
Before you called roll call.
And staff, Mitchell Mon, Esquire. Public comment. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to administrative items. Consideration and approval, conditional use permit, Corbin Lyman Bayless, Dark Canyon Land Company. I can't believe you found some land down there. It must have been for a long time, right? Sitla?
Pardon?
Sitla?
Sitla, I don't know Sitla.
Oh,
It was
Well-
originally.
was it Sitla? Okay.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay.
60. Yeah, I think it was in 60 or 61.
Wow.
The blacks purchased it, put it for auction. The story I've heard is they were the only ones who showed up to buy the land, so
That-
they ended up with it and
That's awesome.
They were
farmed
the
it on
only
and
ones
off
with
until.
money.
Pardon?
They were the only ones with money.
Yeah, I think they bought it for $17,500.
Wow.
So yeah,
And a full section.
yeah,
Damn.
yeah. Measured out just slightly under. I think they mismeasured by about a half an acre when they put those in
Hmm.
1820 or 1926, I believe.
Wish
They
I'd
put 'em in.
seen that.
So just a quick introduction. I'm on the Corbin, but I went by Corby back when I lived here, 30 years ago. I grew up in Blanding, and my parents, Lyman and Jean Bailey's been here forever. But I was asking people like, what should I've never been to one of these meetings. I have no idea what you're actually looking for. I'm happy to answer any questions. But they said, well, tell what you're gonna do with the property. And maybe if you'll indulge me, just give me like 2 minutes. I'll give you like why I'm even here. Came back in July and really hadn't been here for about 30 years, other than a few funerals here and there. And at least for me, living here, I didn't appreciate what was here, but seeing it after having been gone and all over the place, and realized San Juan County is quite special. And convinced my wife we should come back here. She's not from here. That took a little bit of work, but we started looking for property after I was here in July, and just all over San Juan County looking. And when we came across this piece, what shocked me probably most is that it was actually available. I don't know if you know where it's all at. It's in Cedar Mesa, surrounded within the Bears Ears, and with the size of it and what it is, and I know there's been some big commercial investors that have looked at it in the past. It surprised me they hadn't come in, because it looks like a place that you could put a big resort on. You could bring in thousands of people if you all approved it. It has that potential. But as I look at it and what San Juan County is, what I grew up with San Juan County, what I see out there, it would destroy it in many ways. That what is amazing about that piece of property, what's amazing about San Juan County is how wild it still is. It feels like one of the last wild places in the world. And being out there, and I experienced that, the solitude and the silence and the darkness and the stars and all of that. It's like, how do you preserve this? And as I've talked to my parents, I know there's lots of concerns as these tourists continue to come in, and there's no question some of what we're doing probably will trigger more of that. But anybody that's been on Cedar Mesa recently, the amount of tourism out there is just crazy. and there's got to be a way, I think, to help kind of control this, because I think about what will Blanding, what will Monticello, Bluff, Mexican Hat be in 30 years from now. And I look at Moab, I look at Sedona, I look at what's happening in Zion, what's happening in Arches. People are going to come no matter what. So how do we make it be what we want it to be, those who grew up here? And I think it's through the private property that still exists, but do the best that we can to keep it wild and preserve it. So while we want to do a little bit of development, we want to place some drop structures completely off grid, we want to keep it what it is, which is dirt roads, hard to get into when it rains. When you go there, you don't see anybody else, but kind of the way that I want it to be when I'm out there right now. So, a lot of details we still need to figure out. People ask me, what are you going to do with it? And my most common response is, I don't know, what would you do with it? Because I think there's a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we want to keep it wild. We want to keep it what it is, keep San Juan County as much as we can the way that it is, and figure it out as we go and work together with all the local towns and communities around. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I have no idea what you guys are looking for. Hopefully that covers some of what you're wanting to know about the place.
I guess one thing that I'd like to ask you, Corbin, is what do you see as a maximum build out? I mean, you want to keep it wilderness, but
Yeah. I said, these drop structures we're looking at, which are really small, they would sleep like 2 to maybe 4 or 5 people at maximum. It's hard for me to imagine more than 20 or 25 of those units in total on the property. And I don't even want them close enough to where they can even see each other. Because, anyways, I want it to be a place where I would want to go on vacation, which is when I like to go on vacation. I want a lot of people there. So you put more than that, and it starts to get crowded. And then I think, but not everybody can probably afford to stay in a drop structure like that. So, do a few tents as well that are a lot cheaper, but very small numbers. Is it 10 or maybe 20 tents? Don't know for certain. But the numbers can't be very big, or the place gets too crowded, it brings too many people, and it creates a lot of other distractions, I think, from what it is. So, 30 to 50 units in total, but even that's probably on the high end as we start to look at it. There's a lot of logistics too. It's because we're not going to put roads in, it limits in a lot of ways how big you could even go if you wanted to. And I just think even putting roads in starts to deteriorate from what it's supposed to be. So it's hard to say, but honestly, I'd be looking for thoughts from you guys as well as to, what would make sense as you go. Because honestly, a lot of these questions we're trying to answer ourselves right now.
Can we pull up
Ben,
the documents that are associated with it? I'm happy to control them mouse if
well,
Yours should work too, I think, though.
it
Lloyd
doesn't.
does-
Oh,
Lloyd does it like this.
Yeah, that doesn't work either.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Go for it.
Corbin, Ed Dobson here. How would it affect you if we said we'd like to have a limit on the number total occupancies? You got up to 25, I think. Could you live with that?
Oh, certain. We're talking total or on the drop structures?
Well, you got 25 drop structures
Yeah.
and 15 tents,
Yeah.
10 RVs.
Yeah, I on the 25 on the drop structures, I don't have any concerns with that being the limit. It's hard for me to imagine even getting to that number. No, things could change over time, but I wouldn't have any concerns with that at all.
If it were 25 total structures, that'd be a problem.
I'd probably be more concerned because I don't know that we know, particularly on the 10 side, whether we're talking about 5 or 10 or 15. So I'd hate to, at this point, kind of lock that in before we know for sure what the split of those might be. I think a lot about, too, is not just the number of the structures, but what's the number of people that would be in total coming, number of cars that this would result in. So, I wouldn't want 50 tents on the property because that's 50 cars that are coming with each of those tents. So I want to be really thoughtful around what's the total number of people that would be coming on any given day, and think about the split between the tents and the drop structures. And RVs, whether we do that or not, I don't know. We put that in there as just as a potential, but that's one that even worries me probably more. That'll generate more traffic than I'm certain we would want, but it might be something we would want to explore in the future.
I would say, why don't we leave it as your application looks, if that
Perfectly fine.
25
Yeah.
and what was it, 15 and 10?
Yeah.
And then if it
follow up, Mr. Chairman?
continues on, you come back in too.
Right.
Go ahead, Ed.
You mentioned the roads. Looking at the maps, I believe 16 is the Sitla section in there. We see a road coming in on the north and coming in on the south, and the map doesn't show it connecting up, but it sure does because it's numbered on both sides the same. We don't see anything of a road coming into section 2. What do you got for roads in there now?
So there's a main road off of Snow Flat that's maintained by the county. So the current maps, I believe when we looked at them, we came here about a month ago, the current maps aren't actually accurate with what the county roads are. So there's a road that comes off of Snow Flat that runs right to the northwest corner of the property. That's the main entrance to the property. It's been used since the property was made private. County maintains the road up to that gate. They plow it, they maintain it, but it doesn't have a name. It's not actually named. Some of the maps listed as Snow Flat, but it's obviously not Snow Flat because it's coming off of Snow Flat. And then I don't know if it's on there, on the east north corner is where there's another road that comes off that county road. So I believe from what we've been told is before this was made private, the county road actually cut through the middle of the property and it was rerouted when that property was made private. And so you have sort of those two entrances into the property, which are sort of the tails of where the old county road used to cut across it, if that makes sense. I think they were both of those accesses were listed on the Alta survey. A little hard to see there, but
So they just cut it up and around that northeast corner.
yeah, so they rerouted. So the county road now actually goes all the way to the north and around that northeast corner of the property.
But there's still a road that goes in.
On both that northeast or northwest corner and northeast corner, there's
Okay.
still two entrances and two gates into the property from both of those roads.
That answer your question, Ed?
Yes, sir, but I've got another follow-up as usual. That'd be okay?
Yeah.
Corbin, how would you feel about something that the Planning Commission did that limited where you could put the road accessible stuff?
What do you mean by road accessible?
In other words, you got roads coming in, as you just pointed out, but then it's kind of sketchy where you could be driving right now. If we said we would prefer to have your road accessible stuff closer to the existing road accesses, what would that do to you?
So make sure I'm tracking the question. So you say we place the structures we would closer to the road access?
Yeah, because your drop structures obviously can go anywhere, but I'm wondering what kind of, if you wanted to do your road accessible stuff throughout the entire section, you'd be doing a lot of road work.
So there's actually, if you look really closely on the Alta survey, there's roads on the property today, and we don't actually plan to enhance or change those. So there's a road that runs along. So if you come through the northwest corner, there's a road that runs right along that fence line on the property side, and it cuts up about midway, and then you'll see it. You can see it cutting through. They almost look like little trails on the map. Those are actually roads that I'm driving on them almost every single day. Those roads go all the way there. The southwest corner is inaccessible by cars entirely, but the rest of it, the roads track all the way around the tree line. They go all the way around the south edge of the fence and then all the way down the eastern side and all the way around the north side. So there's existing roads, which are all marked on the Alta survey, that traverse the property. We have no plans to put any additional roads across that center piece. In fact, we're actually looking to figure out, is there ways to restore some of the natural vegetation? Because we're getting quite a bit of, I think, ground soil loss through erosion. And so putting some of the cedar back, we're trying to figure out if there would be a way to stop some of that erosion, but no plans to put additional roads across the property. We think the existing roads give us plenty of access as we space those things around. My concern with requiring them closer to the county road is I have to bunch them up. And I really would like to keep them separate and apart from each other so that people can kind of experience what it's like to be out in the middle of nowhere.
Understood. Thank you.
Oh, you bet. And then maybe just to clarify, we don't have any intention of changing any of the entry access points to the property off of the county roads either. No changes there whatsoever.
It makes me think of something else. Signage
Yeah, that's a good question.
is going to be needed,
Yeah.
I think, to keep people or to get them there.
They're already confused. So I don't know if you guys are
They're
familiar with that
tourists.
area. If you go up Snow Flat, you turn off, the road actually splits. So if you stay to the left, it takes you to Moonhouse Ruins. If you go right, it comes to our gate. I'd say about every third trip I go back and forth, I'm stopping to tell somebody they've come up the wrong road. And that road's not named anything either, so their maps don't show what that split is. So signage of both that road probably needs to be named, which we've got some ideas on what we'd love to name it. The county's open to it, but then signage to make sure people don't go down there. I think that's good for the tourists that are trying to get to Moon House, and if they're trying to get to us as well. I don't know what the process is there around these sort of signs. We have no intention of putting it up immediately. This would be probably more next year that we'd be looking at signage, other than a road name.
Because, you know, if your road goes all the way around your perimeter pretty much of the property, there may need to be signage too to keep people on your property.
It's all fenced.
Oh, it's all fenced. Okay,
Now,
that's good to know.
it needs some repair work, but there's almost 4 miles of fence line. I'd say about half of it's still standing, but it's obviously there's fence all the way around it and we need to increase the no trespassing signs, but it's all enclosed.
Because I could see a lot of social trails or, you know.
Yeah, the blacks have faced that for a number of years, just keeping people off of the property. And so in a lot of areas, they've placed additional blockage and stuff where people were getting onto it. And we'll continue to put more of that up to keep people off the property for a lot of reasons.
And it's in the center of a very cultural, you know,
Yeah,
sensitive area. So there's lots of artifacts.
there's
and-
tons.
So I kind of feel like education might be an important piece to the
It's
whole
huge.
operation.
So my son works for the museum now since he's come out here and fallen in love with San Juan County. A few weeks ago, we had Jonathan Till from the museum out and about 7 or 8 other archaeologists, Winston Hurst, one of my relatives, and we walked the property for almost half a day. And because to me, one of the most incredible pieces of the property is this ancient heritage that's there. And there's ceramic, there's all kinds of stuff all over the property. It is one of the challenges we're trying to figure out is because I think one of the most special moments of being out anywhere in this area is walking up on something and seeing that might have been how it was dropped, 3,000 years ago, and it's still laying there. How do you give people that experience without them walking away with the artifacts? But at the same time, I think there's a huge educational piece. And not to get too much into me, but I went to elementary school in Montezuma Creek. And I think about, the kids that are in these kind of schools and how much do they understand how amazing these cultures are that were there. And so I think about really the educational piece, not just for students, but even visitors that come. How can we teach them the story of here? And it's certainly the ancients, but it's the black story too. The blacks and these ancient cultures for thousands of years have tried to carve out an existence and survive in this really inhospitable area. So how do you give people a little taste of, this is the story of this property and the story of San Juan County. So I see education as being a very big component of it.
Sounds like you've considered a lot of these things. Special spot.
Yeah.
It is.
I do have one real quick. So you ask what would you do with the property? So that so I was out there, as you know, and the thing we talked and I like everything. I like the size, I know it's probably an expensive venture, so everybody's got to make some money, to pay for this venture. So I don't think we ought to limit you. It sounds like you've limited yourself on size, but the one thing I thought that would be an attraction and something that is not offered anywhere close to you, and you don't have it mentioned here, maybe you don't have any intention, but would be like some kind of service.
Yeah.
As far as little store, food, water,
Yep.
Anyways, do you see something,
I do.
kind of an element of that?
Yeah, and the only reason we didn't put about it is because I have no idea exactly how to solve this problem yet. But I think about people that are coming. I actually see this happening now because I spent so much time up there the last 6 months. Even before we locked in on this property, I was camping on Comb Ridge for 35 days straight just to figure out I have to put my hands on things to know whether it's the real thing. And I see people up there. They book up a camping site or they come up there. And any other national park or park you go to, there's going to be a gas station 3 miles down the road. They show up ill prepared. They have no supplies. They don't know where they're at. And they get lost or they can't get gas or whatever it is. So I think about us booking tourists to come here. They can't show up naive thinking that, I'll just drop my stuff at the place and then I'll go figure out where I'm going to eat or I'm going to get water. It doesn't exist. So we're trying to think about how do we solve that problem. I think a lot about, and maybe we're sharing here, but if you want to know, but how do you pre-order meal kits? You can see these things online, but what I ideally would love to do is these are locally built meal kits. locally raised meat, locally raised produce. And so not only we make sure you have food if you would like it, and you can order that as part of your experience to come and stay, but it also really allows us to generate more market within San Juan County and sell more of the products locally here that they're sending out to sometimes come back and be sold in the grocery stores. Long term, I think, go all the way to the end of the spectrum. I think eventually you could put a really beautiful restaurant on this property that even people of Blanding and Monticello and Bluff would. The views are, if you haven't been there, I encourage welcome any of you to come out. The views are incredible. How can you create a great restaurant that not just for tourists, but the locals could come out to for a night away? But that's so far down. There's so many logistics to solve before we get there. But yeah, food is a major sort of logistic, but also want to make it part of the experience of coming out.
What kind of existing infrastructure is there then?
None.
None, right?
Now roads. There's a couple. These roads we've been talking about. That is.
Well, you know
That's
what
it.
happens then if you open a restaurant, you know, if that land nearby ever goes up for sale privately, then
There's nothing.
That's all.
There's
But
nothing else.
it's all BLM.
Yeah.
But
And they're trading out the rest of the Sitla. This is like a one in a million.
It's the
way
only
to-
piece of
I
private
see.
property. Yeah,
Yeah.
on the mesa.
It ain't ever-
take advantage of every little piece of private property. I see. Oh, I see. The rationale.
Well, it's kind of like somebody goes to the lake, and you go to the lake and you think you got lots of ice and you got water and whatever. And the greatest business in the world,
Never
I
ever
wish I
have
owned,
ice.
was Hall's Marina. I could make $1 million
Your
selling
$20
hamburgers and
$20
ice
bag of
cream
ice.
cone. Yeah, anyways, it's not part of your application, but
We're thinking a lot about it. I'm sure we'll be back.
I'm sure you can be back. So,
That task about
I mean, just not even, just to, like you said, yeah, we got a case of water for sale. You'll be all right.
Yeah, we're looking at dispensing machines for propane tanks, like because you literally like self-service your
It's
own. exchange.
$800, but I got one. Any other comments from the commission?
Is this an action item?
It is.
Does our codes or the things call for any facilities on a thing like this, like any sewer or septic or any fire issues or anything
So
else?
they must comply with the health department requirements and the Utah State water system
Yeah.
requirements. So
Okay.
So-
we're just pushing it off
Yeah.
to the health department. We'll push it off to on the fire suppression part of it. That would be pushing that off to David Gallegos.
Aren't you a fire chief somewhere?
That
No.
was my only,
Nothing.
my only concern.
And we've been looking at those already and talking to a lot of the folks here at the county and be reaching out to the state on the water stuff. And our situation is a little unique. It's each individual unit will be off grid on its own, and we're not trying to touch. We don't want to touch the land hardly at all. So we want to put these drop structures on these pillars that screw in, so we don't have to dig foundations. But even putting ideally the septic and the water above ground, so that we're not digging holes into the ground, because there's artifacts everywhere out there. So trying to be very sensitive.
Corbin, so, if we grant this conditional use permit, attached to it is going to be everything you have to comply with. And
Sounds good.
Cody's going to read all of those to you.
I'm ready.
I've almost got it memorized. I've read it so many times. So,
If somebody'd like to make a motion, and then they can include.
I'll make a motion and I'll read them if I must, but they are included. So make a motion and we approve Dark Canyon Land Company LLC's conditional use permit with the following conditions. Really gonna make me read them? All right. Must comply with public water system requirements for water storage and pressure for fire suppression standards. Must comply with any state or federal fire restrictions. Must comply with San Juan County fire policy. Must comply with all building permit requirements. Must comply with San Juan County Health Department requirements and Utah State water system requirements. Must comply with San Juan County business license requirements.
You will get a copy of that.
Sounds good. Anything else from me?
I'll second that.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to approve the Dark Canyon Land Company LLC's conditional use permit. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. very
Thank
much.
you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay. Consideration and approval of Snow Minor Subdivision Amendment 1.
No, that's me.
That's you.
Oh, it's a hard one. Sheesh.
Yeah, another hard one.
This guy again.
Just another minor subdivision within an existing subdivision. That's why it's here.
I can't click on that and make it go down, so I gotta scroll for a while.
So there's an existing house on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it over in your neighborhood?
No, it's off of North Mount Pill.
Who gets the shop? Lot 1 gets the shop.
Mm-hmm. And then that shed on the property line at the back between those two is being dismantled.
Okay, so it's not gonna be a line discrepancy.
No.
Using the existing easement.
Mm-hmm. And the 26-foot allows us enough room for the water and sewer for all three.
Commission. Staff has seen this, Ben.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, got a motion from Ed
Second.
and a second to approve the Snow Minor Subdivision Amendment number 1. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention?
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Legislative items. Spanish Valley Stormwater Master Plan. Greg, are you on?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Greg.
Good.
So we've had this for 3 months.
3 or 4.
Yeah. I certainly like it, and you know, it might be something that we see as a document that might need tweaked later on, but man, it's a great starting point for us, I believe.
Do we have an engineer, county engineer?
Pardon?
Do we have a county engineer?
No.
No. As far as knowing whether or not this is a good fit, and which version of this plan. Didn't you give a few scenarios that you could pick from?
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Yes. If I might, a master plan is a concept, it's conceptual. There are certain criteria that are presented, if I may. I'm sorry, am I out of line?
Yeah, we can hear you.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Now, a stormwater master plan like this is not meant to have a lot of detail in it. It's meant to set a general framework upon which future drainage plans will fit. And as that drainage work is done, it'll fit into the master plan, or they may decide, they may come up with good reasons why it needs to be tweaked at that point. But usually a master plan like this is a document that's redone like every 5 or 10 years in a city that's growing fast. If it's not growing, then that doesn't, then obviously that doesn't make sense. But often as things move and change, it's based on what we're foreseeing would happen. And you know how that is. Looking into the future is always guesswork. So, but it does provide really good background for existing conditions, like Pack Creek flooding conditions and what could be done to mitigate that. And also covers the drainage in the valley and what comes from the sides, those kinds of things in a general way. And as developments come in, they will need to, you have a current ordinance or a draft ordinance that's in, and I was surprised at how good that is, as it is. There's a section in there, section 9 of the draft land use ordinance, that pretty well states out the criteria that would need to be put in place, and it puts the burden of meeting that upon the development's engineer, to be precise. Which is the reason why the first option that's listed here would be to include the Spanish Valley Stormwater Master Plan as an exhibit of the San Juan County Land Use and Ordinance. And it would be more for reference as developments go ahead.
And I like the idea, Greg, of putting it on the developer and not the county, because that's costs that the county can incur.
Absolutely.
They won't.
So the exhibit is just a reference. It's nothing that's enforced.
This is
It,
enforceable.
it'll be with our.
Okay.
Or
Then is there
land
anything
use.
about it that's too onerous for like developers or something like that?
It's kind of like last meeting. My comment would be like how we talked to the developer. They wanted to split the, when they were right on the, and it gives the county some way to, here, let's look at this. Let's look at, use this as a guide. And then if there is a problem, then let's, like he was talking about building it up or terracing it or different things, but at least it gives the county and staff the ability to say we have a document, a study's been put in place, and then kind of puts it back on them, and they can kind of go back and forth. I'm like, it's a good starting spot, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Better than nothing.
There's always ways to mitigate versus condemn. There's always ways. So, and that's kind of one of those things that Grand County has always hit is, oh, well, you can't build there. Why? Then mitigate to get into the elevations that's required for the FEMA requirements. So I'll make a motion to recommend this to the commissioners.
Is he wanting this as an exhibit to Ludma?
Mhm.
Okay.
So it'll be a chapter of our ordinance. Correct, Greg?
So this would apply to the entire county.
Yeah.
No.
No.
This
It's
was
specific.
This study was only done for Spanish Valley.
Yeah. So,
Right.
Just the problem area of the county. I just teasing.
It's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got a motion to make a recommendation to the San Juan County Commissioners that we adopt the Spanish Valley Stormwater Master Plan into our LUDMA. And I'm looking for a second. Got a second? Any further comment? And
No, I guess that just confirms that the county still wants to get rid of Spanish Valley development ordinances. I mean,
I absolutely do. 100%.
okay, because I mean, that is part of the, this is part of the conversation, of other stuff on the agenda, but okay. I mean,
Okay.
it doesn't really
Gives
matter.
us a little control over what developers do as they develop, and it may be 30 years down the road. I mean, that's basically all it is.
As soon as Ivory Homes moves in, it's gone.
okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ed, did you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, motion carries. Okay, Spanish Valley Overnight Accommodations Overlay Application. Jim Schnippel.
Did you guys happen to get my PowerPoint? Oh, good.
And also your
Letter.
letter from your attorney
Yeah, I just
in
wrote that.
response to.
Yeah, yeah. Are you able to play that PowerPoint or?
You don't know where it is, do you?
have access to it from here.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of doubted that. I could pull it up on my email, but we'd be looking at it right here.
No.
Everybody thumb through it.
I can maybe just, yeah, I'll try to describe it as I go
Okay.
to some degree. So anyway, hey, thank you for your time. As you know, as you may know, we received from the county commission a rezone to residential flex their last meeting. And so now we're requesting that an overnight overlay be applied to the property. And we've submitted the application for that, along with the CSP that's required for that, or SMP for that. The project goals for us, we want to build a high quality community that will appeal to residents and visitors of the greater Moab area. We want to create a community that's going to compete with properties in Moab City and Grand County and bring a long-term tax revenue stream to San Juan County in that process in the way of property taxes and transient room taxes. Starting off, the Spanish, there was some conversation during some of our prior meetings about the Spanish Valley Area Plan. And so I wanted to put that in some context. The Spanish Valley Plan is intended to be a high-level template for development in Spanish Valley. It was only meant to create a general vision for the area, while the development ordinances dictate the specific direction that developments take. And that accords with Utah Code 10-9A-405, which states the general plan is an advisory guide for land use decisions, the impact of which shall be determined by ordinance. So it's kind of a nice high-level plan, but we look to the ordinance for specifics on how to go forward with developing it. But with that said, our development does meet a lot of the guidelines in the area plan, and we called that out in the application, or quite a few of them. I won't go over those now. So in looking at the development ordinances, residential flex falls under the small community development. And there are some permitted uses I won't read to you, but basically it's just various residential uses that we meet. Of note, it says the conditional uses include the approved PC zone or community structure plan, may include provisions for specific land uses identified as either permitted or conditional use within a given PC zone, and may include uses listed elsewhere in this chapter or additional uses. The lodge or hotel we're proposing is a listed conditional use under this statement for what conditional uses can be applied to, or in the residential flex zone. Sorry, not stating that quite as clear as I'd like. Another development ordinance, the county attorney issued a legal opinion that the overnight accommodations overlay can be applied to the residential flex zone. I think you guys all have copies of that. In state law, as we know, as you guys noted in prior meetings, there's a lot of discrepancies in the ordinances that you have, and I totally understand that. It's been a challenge as we work through them and had our attorney work through them. But the Utah Code does have some language on how to deal with that. And the first one says a land use authority shall apply the plain language of land use regulations, and that's what the county attorney did in her opinion. But there's also part 2 to that same code, and it's interesting. It says if a land use regulation does not plainly restrict a land use application, the land use authority shall interpret and apply the land use regulation to favor the land use application. So not only are you supposed to read it in plain language, unless it plainly restricts a use, then it should be approved. Another ordinance, overnight accommodations have the potential to be an important part of the Spanish Valley and San Juan County economy. And that's what we'd like to do. We want to build a master plan community that provides tax revenue for the county. We want to draw people, residents and visitors from the Moab area who would stay up there into San Juan County. In other resort communities we've built, such in like in St. George, we've seen property taxes go up higher for homes that have overnight rentals as opposed to other homes in maybe the greater area that don't have that applied to them. And sometimes that goes up 2 to 3 times as high in value. So that has a direct effect on the property tax that the county could see from that. Yep, there we go. So the other thing I think we'll do is by creating this community, we're going to help develop a base population that will help support the development of the of Sitla's neighborhood center, which is right next to our property. If you can look at the map, it's just basically abuts the property to the west of us. And we feel like we can help them get that going sooner than they might otherwise if there's a bigger population base in the area that they can appeal to with their businesses. Another ordinance, the overlay ordinance should be applied to all new proposals to ensure approved projects minimize community impacts and result in tangible community benefits through the application of creative design. And so a master plan community like the Balance Rock Resort is a better approach to overnight rentals than the neighborhood to the north, where a patchwork of overnight properties has evolved. And there have been some ongoing discussions in these meetings about that, and also I've heard them in talking with neighbors in the area about that as well. And looking at the neighborhood just to the north, if you guys have the map in front of you, I did a random search on April 10th just through Verbo and a number of other overnight websites where people advertise properties, and I found 16 properties just barely, just to the north in that neighborhood. And neighbors have told us that there are actually many more than that in that area. Especially with the addition of ADUs and things like that. And then I called the county and looked within 1,000 feet of our property boundary just to the north of the property, and found, if you have the map, there are 3 or 4 licensed homes in that area, and there are only about 15 homes, I think, within 1,000 feet. So it's a decent number. There's also one unlicensed one that they know about, and another property that runs a business with overnight stays for their clients in that area. And then of interest also farther up in the north of that same community, outside of 1,000 feet though, you find an RV park that someone rents for overnight rentals to people pulling travel trailers and whatnot. So in our view, an approval of the overnight accommodations will bring this property into parity with what's already occurring in the neighborhood to the north. Some people in the community have asked, why more overnights? What they'd like to see is regular residential and probably affordable housing. I would love to do affordable housing. I talk to Randy once a week about trying to find land where we can do affordable housing in Spanish Valley or in Moab, and it's very challenging to find. I would love to do that project, but it's been difficult. As far as a need for overnight rental properties, the other day I did a search on the MLS. I'm a realtor also, in Spanish Valley and Moab Valley, and I only came up with 13 residential properties that were for sale that are advertised with overnight rentals being allowed, which it's not very many for that whole greater area. I have 2 clients I'm working with who are looking for overnight rental properties, and I've been following it for 6 months straight, and it's really hard to find something that they want to buy in Moab. It's just not much. It's not much availability. Also, when we look at the ratio of overnights that we would be adding, say 220 residential units to the overnight rental numbers in the area, it's important to think about other future development that's going to happen in that area. There's a 120 lot regular residential subdivision that's being planned just right next to this property. And then also even more importantly, Sitla plans to add 3,134 residential units in the future. I know that's down the road, but I think in the view scheme of things, we're going to be pretty insignificant by what is coming that way in that area. Jones and DeMille did a study, and this is cited by Sitla's in their community structure plan, that when it's built out, they're expected to create approximately 9,640 equivalent residential connections in commercial, mixed-use, attached unit, residential, single-family, detached, and residential development. Residential development, I didn't phrase that right. Any questions so far about what I've covered, or no? Okay. So the approval of an overnight overlay will allow us to appeal to residents and visitors who want to buy into and live in a master plan community. We'll be designing it up front to mitigate issues sometimes correlated with overnight rental properties. And we want to allow people to buy into a community where they know what they're buying into. They know what their neighbors can do up front, what's legal. They know that can happen. We'd like to mitigate any problems on that front. And it'll be a clean, orderly, high-quality planned community. The range of housing types we think was really going to appeal to visitors and residents in the area, as well as locally employed people. We do have that in the plan later on here, I'll cover. And we also want to set a standard of quality. Gardner Plum is well known for building high quality projects. We've done a number of these in the St. George area and other areas. And if you look at the pictures I've seen on the PowerPoint, you can see a picture of some of the homes, and also the clubhouse and pool and pickle, I don't know if it's pickle or tennis courts right there, but of the area. You can see we do try to build good quality products. And we think this will set a nice standard for other people who develop in the area also. Some of the community benefits we'll have are open space, trails, clubhouse, pool, pickleball courts, possibly tennis, basketball. We have the latter two haven't fully been defined yet. Now, one of the big community benefits is that we took 14 of our single-family lots along the north edge of the property, and we converted them to affordable and employee housing. And that would consist of 7 duplexes and 1 fourplex, which would be a total of 18 units of affordable and employee housing for the area. Employee housing could be directed toward people who work within our project, and affordable could apply to the greater, Moab, Spanish valleys. We'd like to help with that. We can't solve the problem, but I think we can make a dent in it by doing that. So one question that came up in the meetings was the density and how many houses we were planning to add to this whole area. And it's interesting because you got to think of this as a 72-acre property. It's a pretty big piece of property. And the Spanish Valley residential zone, which is what the prior zoning was, and the residential flex, which we have now, is allows the same zone. It's basically 4 to 5 units per acre, 289 to 361 units. We're actually proposing, if you count the lodge units as equivalent of 1 unit, a total of 350 units between lodge and housing. And that's actually fewer than what we could do if we just developed under just the regular under the regular zoning of residential flex. Now, those lodge units get discounted down for equivalent residential units because they're smaller and they're only used, certain to have a vacancy rate, and that equates to an effective amount of number of 259 equivalent residential units. So quite a bit fewer than what we theoretically could put on the land. Interestingly, Sitla's neighborhood center, which is just to the west of us, predicts that they'll have an average density of 8 units per acre. And if we took that 8 units times the 72 acres that we're on, that would mean that we'd put 578 acres on that same property. So we are getting pretty low below what Sitla's proposing to do. I also took a look at the surrounding properties to look and see how we can mitigate impacts on distances from other existing homes. And you guys can flip through the slides on that. The closest home is just to the north. It's 55 feet away from the corner of the home to our property line. But if you look a little deeper, then they would have a 50-foot road buffer right away within our property. And then the employee housing lots are 75 feet deep. So, and that's before you get to the overnight rentals. So overnight rentals would be 125 feet from the property line and at least 180 feet from the nearest home. And all the other homes are even farther away than that. And there are only, I think, 4 homes on that north property line that abut the property. So we're not, I think at one point someone commented that we're surrounded by residential, which is not the case. It's pretty wide open out there. The lodge is 1,200 and 1,000 feet from the closest structures, so it's quite a ways away. Also, we feel that's going to have an impact. Now, an important way to mitigate any impacts, we think, is to build help participate in the extension of the old airport road, and we talked about that last time. I think it's about 1,280 feet, and the county owns half that right of way. They own 40 feet of that right of way, and Sitla is willing to donate the other. It's part of the agreement, the purchase sale agreement, when you guys bought that 10 acres, that Sitla would donate that land, and that the county and Sitla would participate in the cost of building that road. We'd like to be a participant in that as well. Also, we had a meeting with Sitla earlier this week, and we all seem to be in accord that we're willing to go forward and do that. And we think this would be really good because it will direct traffic. East Allen's kind of a wonky shaped street. This would be a direct shot out to Spanish Valley. It would serve the greater community when Sitla builds out. Also, we feel like our residents and guests would be more likely just to continue on to Highway 191 as opposed to driving on Spanish Valley Drive. So that will help to mitigate impacts on the community also. Let's see, traffic. So one thing that was interesting, and our traffic engineer pointed out that we might actually, by getting an overnight overlay, reduce the amount of traffic compared to if we built regular residential. And that's because typically, I think Elaine Gisler said last time that maybe 60% occupancy rate is what overnight rentals see in Moab. So we don't expect these houses to be occupied full time. So we might actually see a reduction in traffic with an overnight overlay. Water, I think, is really important. There were some comments during the public comment period. I think one person said a couple of times that overnight renters will use 8 times as much as citizens in water. I did a lot of Googling. I couldn't come up with that exact quote. What I did find was that there are instances of the occasional unhappy guest who leaves water and power on to kind of get back at a landlord they don't like or a property owner they don't like. But what was more interesting was that tourists who use overnight residential properties typically use less water than they stayed in a motel or hotel. That was a study that I ran into out there. And then also that guests typically are responsive to requests from the landlord to say, if they ask them to please be careful with using water and power. So I think you can actually get in front of that by proper messaging to the guests and help them not waste water, which is a precious resource. We'll have water-wise landscaping and water efficient landscaping, and we'd like to work with the special service district in the county in ways to identify other measures we can reduce water, or maybe gray water reuse if the health department's okay with that, or whatever else we can do. We're open to all those things. Importantly, we'd like to put the water to beneficial use that the county has and the special service district has. They put a lot of money into putting in a 500,000 gallon storage tank that has a capacity to service 800 equivalent residential connections. And Cascade Water Resources did their annual well report that came out in May, and they stated that Spanish Valley Service District is only extracting 13.2% of their total approved water rights. So they're not using much of it at present. And they included a graph that I put in the PowerPoint. And you can see how little the Spanish Valley Special Service District is using in comparison to the rest of the Greater Valley there. Along the north property line, there's water, sewer, 3-phase power, and gas. It's a great place to do this type of project. Stormwater, it was mentioned earlier, is really important too. We've been working with neighboring property owners and Sitla to coordinate our storm sewer designs with theirs, and we do have a copy of the latest plan that the county has, and we've given it to our engineers so that make sure we abide by that. Overflow parking we've talked about before. We do have that option, and we have the option to add more to handle anything that's needed in the community. Lighting, dark sky is important. I don't like lots of lights, so I will make a personal effort for that. And we've been meeting with some of the neighbors too that live in that area and talk to them about how we can mitigate lights on them as well by maybe building walls where headlights may be shining toward their houses and things like that. We want to be good. We want to be good neighbors where we can help people. In summary, we ask that you approve the application of the overnight overlay district for the property, and that the terms of our application will define the development of the property. And that's all I have. Okay.
Any questions from the commission? Jane?
I have some questions.
Okay.
So being as undeveloped as it is right now, and that just bordering a few properties there on the north side, this would be the time to address buffering. Right now, you're including the road as part of the buffer. Is that correct?
Well, the road would serve as a buffer. Yeah.
Because in the spirit of good, being a good neighbor, I question whether or not the road would make a good buffer since it is traffic.
So that road was designed and put there to connect into East Allen. So we have that northwest property point, and then Sitla has kind of a master vision of where the road should be, and they would like to see that road in there to connect with their plans. And so that's why that road was put there. To us, it doesn't. That was an obvious starting point for the road for the community. To me, it doesn't matter where it goes. To be honest with you, it could be back farther off that property line.
And so the road that Sitla wants to build could exist, and then you could have a second or an entrance that goes into your property further, right? So that,
Potentially, yeah.
because this would be the time to consider that before any, there's a lot of mitigating that can't be done because there's already build out. But one thing that I need to ask our commission and our staff too is that in your records it was reported that our county sees overnight rentals as a residential use and not a commercial use. Because if our county does consider overnight rentals a residential use, then there is a maximum buffer amount, and so we can request that you provide this neighborly buffer, a reasonable neighborly buffer. But if the county is saying that overnight rentals are resident or
Commercial.
Or commercial, which is it? Is it residential or commercial? Because if overnight rentals are not commercial, then why are we asking for business licenses from these people who are overnight renting?
Because they're running a business.
So then wouldn't it be commercial?
But San Juan County doesn't recognize it that way. They're all residential, single-family home.
So what is our staff?
Yeah, I know.
They're taxed as a nightly rental. There is an actual tax bracket for it. So, like a lot of our homes out there were about $6,000 a year for the same house that somebody else is paying $1,200 or $1,500 a year for. So the tax bracket's completely different, but when it comes down to it, they're single-family residents that you're just given a business license to run an operation out of. It's no different than if you were living in your house, running an office out of it. Your house is not commercial. You're running an office out of it. You have a business license for it.
Okay, that helps clarify that.
And that's the way I understand it. Is that
The short answer is this: the county would like it to be commercial. However, there have been some recent Supreme Court and Court of Appeals decisions that have said that even though the county calls it residential and the county makes them obtain a business license and so forth, they're looking at the zoning ordinance, and from that standpoint, they're saying that the property is a residential property, even though it does all this. If it doesn't explicitly say so in its zoning ordinance, and we have about 3 cases that we're litigating right now on that exact distinction. And the Ombudsman's office is going to issue an advisory opinion on that very with you guys probably know him, Saunders and North Moab Holdings.
It's
Or
within
actually, it's not that one.
it's within that 1,000 feet of the north of you. Yeah.
Aaron Thompson.
Aaron Thompson.
That one is the Ombudsman's, State Ombudsman's office is going to issue an advisory opinion. But
Well, so for right now, overnight rentals are considered residential use.
Mhm.
So there is not a buffer requirement.
That was so. I asked that question of Scott when we first started meeting about this project, and he told me it was a residential use. But I realized in the code, the commercial use needs a 100-foot setback, and so we thought, why not just do that? And that's why we put that employee housing on the front, that north end, which would not have overnight accommodations, as our anticipation, to add an additional buffer to that neighborhood to the north.
Now the lodge would be considered commercial.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Do you still stand on your recommendation, you and Brittany's recommendation on the overnight overlay after reading the letter that came from Colby Smith?
letter from Cook,
Did you not get it?
I think I got it.
Okay.
So,
If you guys still stand on it, then
yeah.
okay.
My comment would be they're really overnight is mixed use, really, and so I don't know how you can really determine one or the other. I mean, you can have a residence and a basement is overnight, so there's two different things on one
Mhm.
property. So I was in St. George Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We work in the morning, and just because that's me, we go look at houses, just different builds. And we looked at a few. I knew this was on the agenda. We went and looked at a few, and they really are a mix. We go kick the tires on a few. Some that are some are overnight, and some right next to them, people will be living there. And then you talk to the one guy, he's like, "Yeah, we live here about 6 months," and then the 6 months were gone. We overnight, and they manage it. And I actually, after this week, I really prefer this compared to all the residences that have overnight rentals in them, just because it's actually really neat what they have there. You have the lodge, people walking around. You had some people that had bought there, were living there, and well aware of what they bought, but they were maybe not 365, but they were, full time residents over the 30 days. And I guess my comment would be I really like how at least this we have the opportunity to plan it out. It's rather than just the checkerboard like you show about your neighbors, that there's some here, some there, some aren't licensed. I think it's a great project. I really do. I like it. I'd like to buy one.
They're for sale.
I don't. Well, that's not far enough away. But
Okay.
So,
And?
so how feasible is it to increase the buffer, at least from those existing houses?
Are you talking about rerouting the road?
Well,
Or
the road goes, how far does the road go on? It just goes to that northwest corner?
so that's where we have to start, because that's where the legal right of way is from that's where the county owned road starts at that corner.
Right, so your entrance could go in.
Yeah. So the problem you have to remember though too, there's surrounding properties that are going to get developed in the future, and there's going to be probably quite a bit more traffic than what we're going to do at some point. And so when you start throwing jogs into the system and stuff, it gets kind of complicated from having traffic flow smoothly. So we looked at trying to design a system that would flow with what we thought was going to happen with Sitla and some other neighboring property owners, private property owners. I think to do what you're trying to say, we talked about, I can't remember if we talked about this county commission, maybe the planning commission last time, was if Sitla, I mean, the county road would have to come in farther south on our property border for us to really effectively move that north road and have it function for the community going down the long term. I get what you're saying, and I would, to be honest, from a land development perspective, it's a lot better for me to put lots on that north property line, but it's challenging from a traffic flow perspective.
You know, I just see as much as you can do to I know it's just, might be a big deal for a developer, but it means a lot, I think, to residents is to see developers, accommodate, you know, and help mitigate.
Yeah. I mean, one thought we could try to put a wall along that north end and see if that would give some additional effective buffer to the residents up there.
Well, you know, I guess I would encourage that conversation with those neighbors, because, you know, this is the time to do it because it's possible still.
Mhm.
And then I may change the topic a little bit from buffer to community benefit. I know you've talked about trails and this kind of thing. I think it would mean a lot if your property connected to future trails, like what they're planning for Spanish Valley Drive, but also, you know, a way for people to walk or bike, not through your property necessarily, but around it to access, you know, the public lands and Ken's Lake that are over in that vicinity. I think that would be a very neighborly
Yeah.
thing to do.
So on the northeast corner, kind of where the road, that north road takes a jog to the southeast. In the Sitla's plan, there's I don't know which picture you have up there, but we looked and talked to Sitla about trying to. They have a road proposed that would continue across from there. We talked to them this week about having another point of access that would leave our property from the east side, that would be kind of north of Ken's Lake. In fact, Randy and I just drove that on the way down here, and we think that would be a nice place to connect out. And the neighbors can go through this community. It's not going to be a gated community. There are other landowners that have rights to go through it, so we don't anticipate gating it off. So they'll be able to go through and use, you know, the roads and stuff to access when there's future connections to the neighboring properties.
What purpose would anybody have to drive through there?
Well, I'm just saying if the neighbors want to, it's gonna be part of a bigger connected community as Sitla builds out in some of the neighboring private properties. Yeah. So I anticipate there'll be some trails over on the east side that Sitla will do. I think they're planning. I don't know if it's called a scenic drive or what it is, but there's a road that's supposed to go on the far east side. And so I think the way I would like to see it is that our community would connect out that east side to what they have going, at least from a trails perspective, if not from a road perspective.
So you have some residents to the south of you that'll be coming through there? And there are
They
like
do.
one or two houses right
It's
there.
just one house. Yeah.
One, okay. One
Yeah.
with a shop next to it or something. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met with them. I met with them a few months ago.
Is this a recommendation to the commissioners? Or a motion to recommend Balancing Rock, which it would be a overlay for overnight accommodations to the county commissioners.
Okay. I've got a motion
Second.
and a second to recommend to the San Juan County Commission the approval of overnight accommodations overlay.
Step one.
Step one. Any other comment? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know the power's going to go out at 7:30.
Wow. You read
Permits look great.
You
I make a
predict
motion to
the
adjourn.
future?
Actually, Empire is doing a planned outage at 10 o'clock tonight
Oh, really?
for 4 hours.
Really? Well, that's good to know.
But, you know, I thought if Randy got up here and he got long-winded, we would say it was going to be at 7:30.
That works for me.
Thank you.
What's left? Building permit?
Building permits. Has been busy.
Yeah, there's been been several come through this month. Yeah. Spanish Valley.
I think all of us got the email.
Yeah.
So I'll send it to you.
See you, Mitch.
That's on the Harris Road. And he's just putting a shop on his property. He just recently finished his house over there. So
All right, buddy.
oh, he was putting it in for storage units.
This Canyonland's in.
So that
See you guys.
Bynum subdivision.
Sky Ranch? Oh, no.
No,
Lydia?
Lydia. So he put that in, and a lot of the hotels are purchasing pieces for employees.
Right.
And that's my speculation is these two Canyonlands Inns are two that were purchased by a hotel for them. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep.
There was a write-up about that development in some newspaper.
Good or bad?
Good.
Okay, it's a good thing. Is we're creating housing that's affordable.
No, they're gonna.
Yeah, are we maxed out yet?
They're kind of like
I
a
mean,
modular.
58 lots in Lydia, 96
Some
in
kind of
Hassan.
permanent foundation.
This
for 'em.
one's got 259 ERUs. This
Only-
one's got 3,134. I mean,
Only if Sitla comes in and requests all of them.
Mhm.
But that's a big enough check that we go ahead and start our second water system. So because they only get 20 a year.
Mhm.
So if they walk in and say, oh, can we make a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
I get a motion to adjourn
Second.
in a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Good night, Ed.
I'm just saying, like,
Night. Thank y'all.
Guys, I'm gonna run.
Yep. Like, units that are driven in as a permanent
Run
foundation.
over to the store,
For
pick up
buildings
some
to
stuff
that.
before I go home.
Or
Take a
just
trip.
So,
concrete
uh,
pieces, they're
what
setting it.
about,
Take your wife.
Hey, see if
She's in Mexico.
See if guy
Oh,
wants
is
to-
she
what
really?
do you mean, like concrete piers?
Her and
So
girlfriend
piers that
headed out to
extend
Puerto
out like
Penasco.
Yeah, I'm supposed to meet him tomorrow.
Oh,
No.
And it's total,
we
just
have
no
one
guys.
going in right
for
now.
them.
That's one of
for them.
those.
Cool. Hey, tell guy I've got a
pre-built
motor coach
sheds,
for sale.
But then they're built, with 2x6 walls and insulated floors and everything. They put just a
Yeah,
slab,
38-foot pusher.
but then under the slab did a series of piers that do go to frosted.
Where'd you get that?
Picked
Under
it up
that, just
from a
the
guy
whole thing
that
on.
I gotta go
They
home
wanna
before the elevator.
and couldn't
Dies
take
on
it.
the
Oh,
way.
Is it really? They're gonna-
Beaver.
and in 10 minutes,
Yeah.
they're gonna turn
Right.
off the
As a
power.
350
For
cones
all of
with
them
the
are
Allison air ride.
Someone
For how long do you have to
It's
go?
4 hours.
nice.
4 hours.
No slide outs. It's
They're-
94, so
they're
it's 3
right.
slide
Yeah.
outs. But
They're
it's
actually-
got 80
Right, yeah,
miles,
there's-
4,000
if
miles
you
on
can
it. So 15,000 miles ago, he's coming back to
No.
Arizona.
Well, that guy goes to California.
I understand, like,
Up from
piers.
6.
We get the blight, and California gets no power.
Check that motor out.
Some kind of
So it
trade
has a brand new motor and training
credit or
15,000 miles
something.
ago.
So,
They pay a lot higher
Not-
Get one
it's
out.
not like,
per
it's
kilowatt
not like
for
like an-
renewable energy.
I couldn't pass it. I mean, it was,
You know what I mean?
I'm looking for
Right.
one with the slides, but
So what are the
Right,
chances
yeah,
that
you're
this
right.
balanced
Because you
draw
don't have
could
a.
become a
Yeah.
CRA
Like,
like
Well,
yeah.
would the county?
So I agree,
That's
we need to put
correct.
that in our ordinance to have.
Because
Like,
like,
I was wondering,
because
how
Lloyd
did,
brought it
how
up
did
to me.
county
He's
become an
like,
investor in
Cat,
Bluff
when we
Dwelling?
start talking about mobile and
That's an incentive
Had-
to, I mean, I wasn't here.
If
with
Yeah.
that.
it's
It's an
8 by
incentive
8,000
to-
and some miles.
I think this
And now it's got a 10,000.
Right, yes.
Okay, I thought
Well,
maybe.
that- what's
A lot of those
Because
Yeah.
there's no
Right.
diesel generating foundation.
Yeah.
So it's got
Smaller,
100 gallon diesel
smaller.
tank.
Unless they have a
Really
riverside.
good for the county.
It's got-
But that's, up to the range.
Yeah.
It's got solar panels all
Because it
over.
would really hurt if
Yeah.
you had to
You know
pay
what you
taxpayers
plug it in.
dollars for this
It
balanced
charges
draw
every
or
battery.
something.
Oh, no.
Even he's
They-
got a
they
solar
would-
panel.
So yeah, we got the
Consider it as a county would
you know,
consider.
forms of
So
code
basically,
and things like
he's
that too.
not running.
we
So,
just
and
need.
we
but
got
he kept it under
allowed
storage,
to
and I kid you
Well,
not, the
that's a
sides,
long as
the
they're
nose in the
Put
back,
iron in the
got
do
ground.
this
something
little
way
side,
out of the ordinary
you
as
know,
far as like
damaged, but the
cantilever,
sides,
you know,
Not that
looks
they
like
don't
it just
want
pulled
to
out
do
of
wiring,
the
they
really
just
weird
want
modern
to
looking
Okay.
structures. I
Well,
think it's
and-
smart to have
And I mean, it's a good
As it
deal.
develops more and
So
more
it's-
too, I
so
can
that-
see there's gonna be
so it's got-
contingency of people
you
that
hit
will
the air
leave as
level,
well.
Yeah.
Because
and
it
it's
gets
air
to be
levels,
too much
and
for
then you push
them,
the hydraulic,
but also,
and the
you know, like,
hydraulics
I
go
just-
down.
San Juan County's
Yeah, I
history.
almost bought actually one of
Yeah.
those.
The culture
right,
here,
And then you hit
like
dump,
when you
storage.
just
import
set
all
that
these
down where your air
tourists
level
that
is.
come and,
So,
you know, they
for
decide
some
they wanna
reason,
live here,
when
you've
you
got a
hit
whole different
the hydraulic,
demographic of urban people
push the
moving
hydraulics,
to
like,
rural
let's say
areas, and
it's
that
not
brings a
in
whole
park.
different
Yeah.
And then there's
problem.
the ones
So
that,
I've got
that
Tayson
have
chasing out that
children
wire that
that
goes,
have their
it's
new
your air
move
brake,
out.
because it, on those Allisons, you've got neutral, reverse drive, you know what I'm talking about, it's just a push. And so, there's not a park, so I think it's something to do with the air switch.
Locks the air.
Yep, I think it's just the air switch, that there's a power wire that allows the hydraulics to come down those ranges. So,
Actually, you know, I mean,
Well,
they
my one
provide jobs for the down south.
right-hand
in the
rear
reservation.
Right.
ram ain't going
They
in. Oh,
depend
and if it was
on
working
monuments and-
properly, and I
This
have
person
your
would kind of
son,
jobs. They just-
I think it's
Jared Barrett
wiring or
jumped into a gigantic project that he didn't have funding for.
Oh, left.
That's why
Oh.
he went for the CR.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he
So if you.
he did it in
it's
the
gonna stop on the
stages.
side
He's
of
still
the
doing
road,
it. He's still working
you
on it.
hit air
Yeah,
level.
and really,
But he got hit with.
I think we should
If you
allow
have-
more, don't people allow it.
thing
Probably
goes
not
there,
doing his
air
homework
level.
as well as he should have.
You
But said,
don't even have to put.
You
if it's
don't
pull-up side,
anymore.
you don't have to
$500,000
push actually
that
air
or
levels.
but he wasn't.
It's pretty neat, it's a,
Right.
you know, it's probably top of the line.
He left being a school
That
teacher
they paid
to do this
$200,000.
project.
Oh, really?
Here's the
$15,000
way
for
to
it.
choose it first, and
Yeah.
came in the
And he was
council,
the original
It's
owner.
true.
Yeah, just drop it down.
Innovator.
Look at it, trade mine.
Is he also the same
No.
person that's
Well,
trying
it's
to
an
put in
expert,
a hotel
Yeah,
in Monticello?
Yeah.
There's things
Okay,
like
by the golf course, okay.
And
You know,
he's
been there,
gonna
just,
put in an
Yeah,
RV
to
court
move to a different spot.
just past
little
recapture.
more.
We permitted that. It's land that
Troubles with the slide.
Shelby
Yeah,
owns,
which
yeah.
he did on some- did done some stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's
now
not
it's
so
all
cheap for
done in
local
David
people.
Jim,
You know,
you know,
because
on
they-
Right.
because
I
they-
think what we
the
would just
new
have to do is
transfers.
Yeah,
get,
Well,
neighbors.
right, and they have already done their
just
homework,
currently
it's already
the opt-out,
intrinsic.
And-
you know, the ICC
You know,
standard
Right.
for our building code as part of our
I've
county code.
come to
The
depend
only
on
reason we
other-
accept HUD is because we have
It's-
someone says you have to
so
pay. It's
Thank
fine.
you.
So all we have to
See you,
do
John.
is get
See you,
it
bud.
on
Catch you
ordinance
later.
saying,
I'll holler at you when we head to the lake.
as long as they're stripped down, substantially like the HUD.
I
law.
haven't read all.
Guys,
structures
next,
that-
They've done a good job. Well, and I'm sure they'll do a good job with this one.
The one in
So the
Monticello,
boat
I
is
think, if they
about
built
mine.
like a
Yeah.
really
Birth
nice
kind of
golf
big
course
Okay.
with a nice facility.
Yeah.
So
You
I
know,
hope
some
it-
people-
You know what, I can't
The
keep
light
in touch
is
with
Yeah,
her.
thank you.
We have-
Well,
Catch
you guys later. Good luck.
Yeah, John.
Right.
Thanks.
That's all I can say. Like, I'm like Scott. Don't.
Yeah, Elaine explained that to me, you
You
know,
will
the
get there.
importance of a branded
Yeah.
hotel for those kind of
Trying to
travelers.
use
But, you know, I just don't wanna see San Juan County lose its culture by
what
selling
I
out
volunteer
to all
for
these
and what